What's going on, everybody? My name is Aiden and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, today, I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a little bit of a cheeky video, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking about an Australian. No, not Josh Giddey. It looks like there's an article suggesting that the Bulls should go after a different Australian. And ultimately, I think this will be a hilarious video. I don't even know why this is even being written about, but nonetheless, I want to talk about it just because I thought it'd be a good laugh. Today, I want to talk about Zach LaVine potentially going to the Brooklyn Nets to get Australian Ben Simmons into the team. Now, I think this is hilarious for a variety of reasons, but ultimately we're going to get discussing it in this video. Before we get any further, if you like the video and you want to see more from me, drop a like, drop a follow, and or subscribe if you are new. And let me know in the comments below your thoughts about the Chicago Bulls and whether or not you believe we could actually go and pursue, I guess, Ben Simmons. Would Ben Simmons and the Brooklyn Nets be willing to join Chicago? Or I guess, would Brooklyn send Ben Simmons to Chicago? And ultimately, does it even make sense for either team? Now, I think it's hilarious. I really, really do. There are certain articles where I just look at it and I can tell they've only looked at one side of the spectrum, or in many ways, one side of the coin. At the end of the day, there's two sides of a coin, ladies and gentlemen. There's the opposite side. So, obviously, this article suggests that the Bulls should go after Ben Simmons, but in reality, I think they're only looking at the Bulls side of things here, and they're not looking at Brooklyn's side of things. And to be fair, even if they are looking at the Bulls side of things, I still don't think this is necessarily the best trade out there for the Chicago Bulls. So let's get stuck into it. First and foremost, what do the Bulls get with Ben Simmons in the team? Well, look, Ben Simmons, again, is always someone that I've appreciated talking about. I understand he has a bad reputation around the league. I understand people have often questioned his attitude. Even I have questioned his attitude. But he's a talented guy. And at the end of the day, if he comes into this Bulls team, I don't think he would make us better. Because right now, we are one of the worst. Maybe we won't be when the season comes around, but we are one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league, and Ben Simmons makes us significantly worse in that department. Not to mention, we already have Josh Giddey in the team that can, in my eyes at least, kind of plays not a similar game, but will probably play the role that Ben Simmons would be playing here for the Chicago Bulls. Ben Simmons is a guy that pretty much play 1 through 5, really solid defensively. That's probably the difference between Giddey and Ben Simmons for the most part. And ultimately, at his best, he can be a dangerous guy to have on your team. There's no question about it. We don't get to see Ben Simmons at his best very often. He's had a lot of injury situations. He has a couple of mental, I guess, situations as well, which, again, I'm not really going to discuss in this video. But nonetheless, you don't get to see Ben Simmons at his best very often. He is a guy that does take a lot of time off in relation to his NBA career thus far. So that's what you get with Ben Simmons. And ultimately, what the Brooklyn Nets get with Zach LaVine is a 3-level scorer that he, too, has his injury records for the Chicago Bulls. He's been a relatively unhealthy guy over the course of many years with this Bulls team. But you also get someone that's on a very large contract. And ultimately, the reason why I find this hilarious is because it makes sense for none of the teams involved to actually pull this deal off. I know you can find a way to make it make sense. For example, Ben Simmons is on an expiring contract, right? Of course, it would make sense for the Bulls to go after Ben Simmons in that regard, have him play here for a year. Whether he plays or not, I'm not too sure. And then ultimately, you know, he can go off in free agency and go join another team. Maybe it makes sense in that department, but ultimately, it doesn't make sense for the Bulls on the court. It doesn't make sense for Brooklyn to do this either. So why is this being discussed? Well, I'm going to talk about why it doesn't make sense first and foremost, because, again, it doesn't make sense, to me at least. Let's talk about why it doesn't make sense for the Chicago Bulls. I've already mentioned it just a little bit, but he just doesn't fit us on the court right now. If we had the best three-point shooting team in the league and you go and get a Ben Simmons, I think Ben Simmons works well for this team. His defensive work is top-notch in my eyes, and he has a really good eye when it comes to passing that rock, getting the ball to the open man. Sometimes a little bit too much of a good eye, sometimes a little bit too much of a passing style, because he does actually, I've seen this quite a few times with Ben Simmons, he gives up. He doesn't take a lot of the open shots because he wants to play make. That's what he is. That's his personality. And yeah, if we had a better scoring team, a better offensive-minded team, then maybe Ben Simmons could work. I think Ben Simmons could work for a team like the Warriors, per se. Someone that could be a power forward / center, can really, really play strong defense, but can ultimately play make and really be strong for a specific type of niche team. To me, that's the Golden State Warriors. So I think that's where Ben Simmons should go if the Warriors would be interested in something like that. I'm not too sure. But anyway, that's just my opinion at least. He doesn't make sense for a team that's probably, bottom 5 in the league in terms of threes. Not to mention, we do have someone that can play make. Even Lonzo Ball is someone that's going to be able to play make for this Bulls team if he's able to get back to his best. Just doesn't make sense in that department. The only reason to get Ben Simmons is, once again, because he's on an expiring deal. And if that's the only way you're viewing this, then yeah, of course it would make sense if that's the only way you're thinking about it. But let's be honest, let's turn to the other side of the spectrum. Why would Brooklyn want Zach LaVine? That's an interesting topic of discussion in its own right. Brooklyn, the team that pretty much gave up on most of their superstar caliber players in the trades and free agency, gave up on a lot of guys, aiming to go younger. Probably some people even have said that they have a worse team than ours. So what in their bright mind would make them think, you know what, let's go and trade an expiring contract? Because again, they're trying to go younger too. They're trying to get money in free agency too. What in their bright mind would make them go and trade their expiring contract of $43 million, which means they'll probably get just about that much in free agency next season, to go and acquire Zach LaVine, who granted is better than Ben Simmons, but it's going to lock them up cap-wise for a few years? Why would they do something like that? And that's what I mean when I say it's two sides. They only looked at one side of the spectrum here, one side of the coin. They looked at the heads, but they didn't look at the tails, if you know what I mean. It's very easy for the Bulls to come up with mock trades about how everything could benefit them. And maybe getting Ben Simmons here can benefit our financial situation. I personally think it would. And look, if they're willing to chuck in a Ben Simmons, I would personally like some draft compensation from Brooklyn if that was going to happen. But it's not the end of the world for me if you would go and get a Ben Simmons. But they didn't look at what it would do to Brooklyn. Why would Brooklyn do this? Why would they? It just doesn't make sense to me. They don't need a Zach LaVine, and I don't think they want a Zach LaVine either. They're not in the current position to give Zach LaVine the type of competitive spirit he wants. And ultimately, they're not in a position anyway to give up on the money and the draft capital that they could have to go and get a Zach LaVine. It doesn't make sense to me. So, it's one of those type of articles. I don't know who wrote it. I'm not even going to mention it now, just in case. I'm not trying to offend anybody that wrote this. I just don't think it makes sense for the Chicago Bulls, and I don't think it makes sense for the Brooklyn Nets. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, look, I've said it before. I'm not going to lie to you. At his best, I am a fan of Ben Simmons. And on different circumstances, maybe Ben Simmons would be a welcome addition. For example, if he's not being paid $43 million, maybe a cheaper deal next season or something along those lines. Maybe if the Bulls get some three-point shooting on their team, you can get a Ben Simmons to play make for you. Something along those lines. That's not an issue for me. But when stuff like this comes around, when you're talking about Zach LaVine going to Brooklyn, I just don't. Someone explain it to me, please. Someone explain to me why Brooklyn wants Zach LaVine. Why would Brooklyn want to do that? And trade their only expiring deal. Again, this is only to help the Bulls financially. It's the only reason this makes sense. I don't think this makes any sense for the Brooklyn Nets. And I'll even ask you this question before we go. If we did trade Zach LaVine to the Brooklyn Nets and we got Ben Simmons in return, do Brooklyn get any better? Do they go and win a championship? Do they go and do anything? I don't think they do. In fact, I still think we have a better season than Brooklyn if they go and get Zach LaVine. That's all I will say in this current situation. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Keep in mind as well, I don't think Zach LaVine wants to get traded to Brooklyn. I think if that situation comes around, I think he'd rather be in Chicago than go to Brooklyn right now. Not disrespect to Brooklyn. I think what Brooklyn doing, they picked a lane, and I'm happy for them. But I think even if you're a Brooklyn fan, you can look at something like this and say, makes no sense. Makes no sense for their team. And ultimately, as a Bulls fan, I'm saying this, there's only one reason to do this. And for the rest of it, it makes no sense either. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned for more. Take care, and peace.